They all smiled in the group shot on the balcony of the oceanfront villa I hadn't been invited to. My sister in her flowy blue maxi dress perched in the center like some sun-kissed queen. My mother's hand on her shoulder, my brother laughing in the back. Even my ex-husband was there holding a wine glass next to his new wife, as if he belonged more than I ever did. I scrolled through the album my niece accidentally uploaded to her shared Google Photos folder before it vanished an hour later. I didn't even screenshot it. I didn't need to. Every frame was already burned into me. Not a single invitation, not even a message. I sat there in the silence of my Manhattan apartment, the AC humming softly, my fingertips tingling with disbelief. They went without me, again. And this time they didn't even bother to lie about why. They just didn't include me, as if I didn't exist. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. First came the unraveling, and something else I won't admit to anyone, not even now. What I did next wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Because 5 months after I saw those photos, I bought the resort they'd stayed at. And that was just the beginning. I guess I should explain how something like that happens, how you become the one everyone leaves out. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in whispers and glances, in missed calls, in the way your sister speaks for you at dinner and how your mother always adds, "Well, you've always been a little sensitive, haven't you?" It happens when your husband comes home smelling like a woman who wears gardenia and insists you're imagining things. And it happens when you stay anyway, because you're the peacekeeper, the accommodating one, the one who understands. That's what I was for most of my life until I stopped being useful. The thing is, I wasn't always alone. I had a husband once, Ethan. We were together for 8 years, married for 5. He was charming, measured, the kind of man who never raised his voice and made you feel stupid for wanting him to. He was also the one who fell in love with my sister before the ink on our divorce papers dried. They denied it, of course. We reconnected after your separation. She told me, her voice brittle over the phone, as if she were the one who had been betrayed. It wasn't just the affair. It was the ease with which everyone accepted it, like it made sense. As if I had been the unnatural piece in the puzzle all along. I moved to New York after the divorce. No one stopped me. No one begged me to stay. And I kept pretending it didn't hurt until those photos. Until I saw them on that deck, wine glasses raised, my sister's hand resting on Ethan's thigh like she'd earned him. The same villa we were supposed to visit for our 5th anniversary. It wasn't just a trip. It was a celebration of the life they built on the ruins of mine. And maybe that's why I started looking into it. The property, the owner, the shell corporation behind it. Not because I wanted to ruin it for them, no, that would be petty. I wanted to own it, quietly, permanently. I wanted to own the place where they had laughed without me. And maybe deep down I wanted someone to notice. But no one did. Not yet. He was already there when I arrived, leaning against the balcony railing of the small private clubhouse that overlooked the resort. A cigarette dangled from his fingers, not lit. Just a habit, maybe. Something to hold. "You're not dressed like the others," he said, turning his head slightly toward me. I wasn't. The men wore linen and Rolexes. The women wore beige smiles and champagne confidence. I wore black, silk, heels too high for gravel. "You mean I'm not pretending to be casual?" I said, stepping up beside him. He smiled a little too knowingly. Exactly. His name was Adrian Cole. He managed the estate on behalf of the European couple who were liquidating properties after their quiet divorce. I told him I was interested in expanding my hospitality portfolio. He didn't ask what else I owned. No one does when you say it with the right kind of certainty. We stood there in silence for a moment, overlooking the villas, the private cove, the very balcony where they had toasted without me. Adrian handed me a folder. "You're late to the table. There are 3 serious bidders." "I only need 1 signature," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "You always this confident?" I turned and looked him straight in the eye. "No, just when it's personal." He laughed, but his gaze lingered on mine longer than necessary. That afternoon I outbid every one of them. Cash offer, immediate close. The next morning I owned the resort. But what I didn't expect was the man who came with it. Adrian. Technically, he was no longer required to stay on after the sale, but he did. I didn't ask why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe it was because we both had secrets. We met again later that evening after the paperwork was signed. I walked the grounds in bare feet, wine in hand, the moon bathing the pool in silver. "You're not who you pretend to be," he said softly, appearing behind me. "And you pretend not to care," I said, turning toward him, "but you do." We stood in silence. And then his hand brushed mine. Just enough to notice. Just enough to cross a line. I didn't move. And when he leaned in close enough that I could feel the heat of his breath, I still didn't move. I should have. But I didn't. The kiss didn't last long. It wasn't frantic or cinematic. It was quiet, lingering, the kind that feels like it's always been waiting. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke. I walked back to my suite without turning around my wine glass, still half full, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. The next morning I told myself it meant nothing, a moment of heat, a lapse in judgment. It wasn't a betrayal because I owed no one anything. At least that's what I said out loud. But the truth was slipperier. I wasn't sure who I had betrayed more, myself for pretending I was above it, or him for letting him in when I'd built walls specifically to keep people like him out. Adrian didn't mention it the next day. He showed up for our scheduled walkthrough wearing a navy polo and that same unshakable calm. But something had changed in the way he looked at me, or maybe in the way I looked back. We were professional, mostly, until we weren't. By the end of the week, he was having breakfast with me in my suite, talking about restoration plans and linen thread counts. He had this way of touching the edge of the table while he spoke, like he needed something solid to anchor himself. "I don't usually mix with new owners," he said once over coffee, "but you're not usual." I laughed. Is that a compliment or a red flag? He smiled. Both. That night he didn't leave after dinner, and the next morning he made coffee shirtless. We didn't talk about what this was. I think we both needed something unspoken. I didn't ask about his past. He didn't ask about mine. But on the fourth morning, as he buttoned his shirt and I watched him from the bed, he said, "You're running from something." "I'm not," I said quickly, too quickly. He didn't press, but he knew. Of course he knew. The truth was, I hadn't just bought the resort out of spite. I'd come here hoping on some unexamined level that someone would find out, that someone would care enough to ask why, that someone would finally see me. Instead, I got silence. No one in my family knew I owned the resort. Not yet. But that changed the day I ran into my sister. 'Cause she came back. And she brought Ethan. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and oversized sunglasses, the kind that made her look like an old money heiress from a movie. Ethan trailed behind her, carrying 2 suitcases and a Bluetooth speaker. They were laughing when they walked into the reception area, laughing like people without a care in the world. Laughing like they'd never broken someone. I stood behind the front desk, going over contractor invoices. I hadn't planned to be there. The front-of-house manager had called in sick. I stepped in without thinking. I saw her first, and for a split second I froze. Then instinct took over. I stepped to the side, pulled my sunglasses down just enough to make eye contact, and smiled the way I'd seen Adrian do when greeting VIP guests. "Welcome back to Arenal Cove," I said smoothly, checking in. She blinked. Yes. 2-bedroom villa under Willoughby. My maiden name, of course. I forced my lips into a polite curve and nodded. "Ah, yes, we have you in Villa 11, ocean-facing top floor." "Perfect," she said, digging through her beach tote for something. "I think I booked this same one last time we were here." I tilted my head slightly. "You did." That made her pause. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, really meet mine, and I saw it. The twitch in her brow. The falter. Recognition. But she didn't say anything. Neither did Ethan, though I saw the color drain from his face. I handed them the keys with steady hands. "Enjoy your stay." They left without a word. But I knew it wouldn't be the end of it. Sure enough, later that evening, I heard a knock on my private villa door. I opened it to find my sister standing there, barefoot, a glass of red wine in her hand. "I need to ask something," she said. "Of course," I replied, stepping aside. She didn't come in. She just stood in the doorway and said, "Did you buy this place?" I looked her dead in the eye. Yes. She took a breath like she'd been slapped and laughed softly, shaking her head. "Jesus, Naomi." I smiled. No one invited me to the trip, so I figured I'd give myself a reason to come. That was 5 months ago. I know. There was a beat of silence. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Is this about Ethan?" I tilted my head. "Do you want it to be—" Another pause. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked away, wine glass, still full silence trailing behind her like perfume. That night, I slept next to Adrian again. But this time it didn't feel like an escape. It felt like war. Villa 11 shares a wall with Villa 12. A thick one, but old. And that night, through the stone and plaster, I heard muffled sobs. Not loud, not dramatic, just contained, controlled. It was the way she used to cry when we were kids, when Mom left us home too long and she scraped her knee but didn't want to seem weak. That same broken rhythm. I lay awake beside Adrian, his arm draped across me, his breathing slow and even. I wondered if I should get up, knock on her door, pretend I was still the sister who used to sneak her an extra cookie when no one was looking. but I didn't move. Instead, I listened, and I let her cry. The next morning, Ethan was gone. Not gone, but out early. The receptionist said he went to town to get something, though she didn't know what. I found my sister sitting alone on the beach chairs near the infinity pool. Her hair was damp. Her sunglasses were on again. I sat beside her without asking. She didn't look at me. I didn't know you could be so theatrical, she said finally. Neither did I. She turned to me. So what now? You bought the scene of the crime. Are we supposed to have a showdown? You want me to apologize? No, I said, sipping my coffee. I want you to admit something. She stared. That you were never really happy with him, even when you took him. Silence stretched between us. Then slowly she said, he was never yours, Naomi. You just had him first. I looked out over the water. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. She stood abruptly. You think buying a resort makes you powerful? It doesn't. It makes you desperate. Maybe, but at least I'm not pretending anymore. She left without another word. Later that day, Adrian found me sitting in the property's wine cellar. He sat beside me without asking. He was good at that, appearing right when I needed him and never demanding I explain why. She's unraveling, he said. She always was. He tilted his head toward me. And you? I'm somewhere between collapse and clarity. He laughed quietly. Sounds familiar. That's when I asked him, what's your secret, Adrian? He didn't answer. Not right away. But something shifted in his face like a shadow moving behind glass. He reached for my hand and kissed the inside of my wrist so softly I almost didn't feel it. You don't want to know, he whispered. He was right. But I'd ask again. And when he finally told me it would change everything, I should have known the way he touched me wasn't the way men touch women they just want to sleep with. He memorized me my silences, my deflections, the way I cracked my knuckles when I was about to cry but didn't want to. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was intimacy. And I wasn't used to that anymore. It was a Tuesday evening when I found him on the edge of the private dock watching the horizon like he was trying to outstare the sea. I brought 2 glasses of bourbon. He only drank half. You ever been married? I asked. No, he said, not turning his head. But you've lost someone. He finally looked at me. Yes. I waited. He didn't speak for a while. Then he said she was married to my brother. That froze me. I swallowed. What happened? He ran a hand through his hair, jaw tense. He hit her, for years. No one believed her, not even me, until I walked in one night and saw her on the floor barely breathing. I said nothing. I took her in, helped her disappear. I didn't touch her, not then, I swear to you. But later, after the divorce, after she healed, we tried. It was messy, complicated. And she died. 2 years later. Car accident. No foul play. Just a bend in the road and rain. I didn't realize I was crying until he reached out and wiped my cheek with his thumb. Why did you stay here? I whispered. At the resort. He exhaled slowly. Because no one here knows me. And because I thought I'd buried her ghost until I met you. I felt it then. Not just sadness, not pity. Recognition. We were both ruins pretending to be remodeled. I kissed him that night not because I was trying to escape, but because I finally knew who I was kissing. Someone just as ruined. Someone just as dangerous. And yet in the morning I woke up alone. He was gone. And in his place on the pillow next to mine was a single silk scarf. The exact color of blood. She was sitting in the lobby like she owned it. A white linen blouse. Pearls, of course. Reading glasses she didn't need, just an accessory now, something to make her look wise and well-read. Hello, Naomi, she said as I stepped through the entrance. Nice place. Very aggressive. I blinked. What are you doing here? She smiled. Samantha called. She was upset. Of course she did. My sister never confronted her own guilt. She just handed it off to Mom like a receipt. She said you were being theatrical, Mom continued. Her word, not mine. I crossed my arms, and what would you call it? Mom shrugged. Emotional constipation. You always did bottle things up until they exploded. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead I sat. Why didn't you tell me, she asked gently this time, about buying the resort? Because you wouldn't have cared, I said. Or worse, you would have told me not to. She didn't deny it. She just studied me and said, is this about Ethan? No, I lied. Then what is it about? I didn't answer, because the truth was too ugly to speak aloud. It was about all of them. The whole damn family. Their selective blindness. Their tendency to treat my pain like inconvenience. The way I became background noise after the divorce. I bought this place, I finally said, because I needed to own something. I needed one thing in my life that no one else could touch. She didn't react, just nodded slowly like she was taking inventory of my madness. Then, like it was the most casual thing in the world, she asked, and what about the man? What man? The one who's been staying in your villa? The staff noticed. Samantha noticed. I stiffened. Adrian's not part of this, I said carefully. Mom raised a single brow. Naomi, is he the reason you look like you're falling apart and waking up at the same time? I didn't respond, because she wasn't wrong. But then she said something that made my stomach turn. I knew his brother. I stared at her, her eyes darkened. Michael Cole. Worked at a bank your father used to invest through. Quiet man, stern. Got into some legal trouble near the end. What kind of trouble? But she just smiled and stood. I should unpack. I grabbed her wrist. What kind of trouble, Mom? She didn't look at me as she said it. Murder, but it was never proven. The air left my lungs. And just like that, she walked toward the elevator's heels, clicking on the marble like a ticking clock. And I realized something horrifying. I knew Adrian's version, but I didn't know the truth. I was already awake. Between my mother's cryptic warning and Adrian's disappearance, sleep was impossible. I sat in bed with the lights off, staring into the dark, waiting for something I couldn't name. And then 3 soft knocks. I opened the door without checking. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted danger. Maybe I was too tired to care. Ethan stood there, shirt wrinkled, hair damp with sweat, breath laced with bourbon and something else, regret maybe, or just cowardice. I shouldn't be here, he said. No, I replied, you shouldn't. But I stepped aside anyway. He entered slowly as if the walls might spit him back out. He didn't sit, just stood there looking around. You did well with the place. I folded my arms. Don't small talk me. What do you want? He looked at me, then really looked at me. And for a second, I saw the version of him I used to love. The one who whispered dreams into my neck. The one who traced promises across my thighs. I didn't know she was coming here, he said. Your mother. I raised an eyebrow. That's not why you're here. He swallowed. She's unraveling Naomi, your sister. She's paranoid, accusing me of things I haven't done. Funny. That's exactly what you used to say to me. He flinched. I made mistakes. You made choices, I snapped. Mistakes are accidents. You made decisions. He stepped closer. Do you hate me? No, I whispered before I could stop myself. Hate takes effort. There was silence. Then he said it. The thing he should never have said. She was always second to you, Naomi, even when I left you. The words landed like glass on tile-sharp final, and then he reached for me. Not violently, not even desperately, just familiarly, like he thought the old rhythm might still live somewhere in our skin. But I stepped back. You're not the ghost that haunts me anymore, I said. He nodded slowly, eyes hollow. Then who is... And in that moment I didn't know if he meant Adrian or me. He left without touching me again, and when the door shut behind him, I collapsed to the floor and cried for the first time in years. Because I wasn't mourning Ethan. I was mourning the girl I had been with him, and the woman I didn't know how to become. 3 days passed. No texts, no calls, no note. Adrian vanished like smoke, and I told myself I wouldn't care, that I didn't need closure, that I was used to men leaving without cleaning up after their ghosts. But I lied. Every time I walked past the dock, I looked for him. Every time a staff member radioed in about a visitor, my heart jumped. Then late Friday afternoon, I saw him. He wasn't alone. They walked up the beach together, Adrian in a crisp white shirt, the top button undone, and beside him, a girl. No, not a girl, a woman, maybe early 20s, long red hair, fragile features like she'd been carved from porcelain, and a limp just slight enough to make you look twice. She clung to his arm. They didn't see me, not at first. I stood at the balcony of the upstairs bar, watching as he led her toward Villa 6, the one with the best ocean view. My view, our view. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went back inside, poured myself a drink, and waited. Hours later, Adrian came to me. He didn't knock. He used the spare key. I didn't stop him. She's not what you think, he said before I could speak. Really, because she looks a lot like the ghost you told me died. He flinched. That's her sister. I narrowed my eyes. I thought she didn't have family. She didn't, until recently. This is complicated, Naomi. I laughed bitterly. Everything is with you. He stepped closer. I had to leave. I got a call from her 2 days ago. She said someone had been following her, asking about her sister, about me. And you think it was my mother? He paused. I don't know. My world tilted. You told me your brother abused her, that you helped her escape, that she died in a car crash. Was any of that true? Yes, but there's more. I backed away. Of course there is. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, voice taut. Michael didn't just hit her. He made her do things. Dangerous things. Launder money through fake investments. Sign papers she didn't understand. And when she left, he told her he'd take everyone down with him, including me. and then she conveniently died. It wasn't a setup, I swear. I loved her. And what about me? I spat. What is this? He looked wounded. This is real. Then why do I feel like I'm sleeping next to a riddle that might strangle me in my sleep? Silence. Then softly, because I don't know who I am without secrets. I shook my head. I can't do this, Adrian. Not if I'm just a stand-in for someone buried beneath a story you haven't finished telling. He opened his mouth, then closed it. And for the first time since I met him, Adrian looked afraid. Not of me, but of himself. I couldn't sleep after Adrian left. So I did the thing I'd sworn not to do. I went to Villa 6. It was unlocked. The red-haired woman, her name was Mara, was gone, probably out walking the beach in those delicate woven sandals. The villa was quiet, almost eerily so. A suitcase lay open near the bed. Makeup brushes lined the vanity. But it was the leather-bound journal on the nightstand that caught my eye. It looked old, worn at the edges like it had been read over and over again, like it had been carried through fire and rain. I hesitated. I swear I did. Then I opened it. The first page was a name, Eliza Cole. Adrian's ghost. The entries weren't dates, just fragments, emotions, panic written in loops and curls. He told me to sign the papers, but I didn't know what they were. Adrian says he'll fix it. But how do you fix a man like Michael? I heard Adrian outside last night. He was crying. I think he knows I've been lying too. I never told him about the baby. If anything happens to me, Mara knows where the second copy is. In the wine cellar, under the empty bottle of Merlot from our anniversary. I had to write it down. I had to tell someone even if I never say it out loud. I froze. The wine cellar, our wine cellar. The copy of what? I didn't read further. I couldn't. I put the journal back exactly as I found it and left the villa without a sound. By the time I got to the cellar, the staff had already locked it for the night. I stole the keys from the front desk and slipped in alone. It was cold, smelled of wood and fermented secrets. I found the Merlot bottle on the third shelf from the back. Anniversary label. 2015. Dusty, untouched. When I lifted it, a folded envelope slid out from behind it. It had my name on it. Not Mara's, not Eliza's. Mine. Inside was a single page. And on it, in Eliza's handwriting, were 6 words. If you're reading this, it's too late. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, because that wasn't a warning. It was a promise. And someone had planned this long before I ever arrived. I found her by the fountain at dawn, barefoot in her robe, clutching a cigarette she didn't know how to smoke. She didn't flinch when she saw me, just held out the pack and said, "You have any idea what the hell is going on?" I sat beside her, took the cigarette, and lit it with a lighter I hadn't used in 10 years. "I think someone wants me to unravel," I said. She gave a dry laugh. "You're doing a pretty good job on your own." I didn't argue. Instead, I told her about the journal, about the note, about the hidden envelope addressed to me in a woman's handwriting I'd never seen in my life. My sister stared at the fountain as the water tumbled over itself. "You think she was murdered?" "I don't know, but someone left that message for a reason." She exhaled, shaky. "You think Adrian's dangerous?" I hesitated. "Yes." "Then why are you still in love with him?" I looked at her, startled. I never said I was. She turned to me, eyes heavy. "You didn't have to." We sat in silence. Something rare settled between us, fragile honesty. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Not just of what you'll find, but of what happens if you actually find it." "You should be." She blinked. "Because the truth doesn't set you free," I said. "It just makes the cage more obvious." A moment passed. Then she reached into her robe pocket and handed me something. A flash drive. "I found this in Ethan's luggage," she said. "I wasn't snooping. I was packing to leave." "I'm done, Naomi. I can't pretend anymore. I thought you should see it." "What's on it?" I didn't look, but the file name said Eliza Cole Investment Fraud. I stared at it like it might catch fire in my hand. "Why would Ethan have that?" "I don't know," she said, "but maybe you weren't the only one Eliza wrote to." That night I plugged the drive into my laptop, and what I found shattered everything I thought I knew. Emails. Dozens of them. Between Eliza and Ethan. Dates that predated my divorce, financial reports, real estate holdings, offshore accounts, and one final message from Eliza dated 2 days before her death. "He knows. I think he's coming for me. If anything happens to me, tell Naomi. She's the only one who will believe it." I sat in the dark for hours. Then I called Adrian. "I need to talk to you," I said. "Now." His voice came through the line low, shaky. "I was about to call you," he said. "There's something you need to see." "What is it?" "They found a body," he said. "In the marsh beyond the old trail." I stopped breathing. "It's not Eliza," he added. I whispered, "Then who?" But he didn't answer. Because he didn't have to. In my bones, I already knew. It was Ethan. And And he didn't just fall into that marsh. They found him face down, mud caked to the side of his head neck bent at an unnatural angle. No obvious signs of a struggle, no blood, no bruises, just silence. Drowning silence. Adrian was already there when I arrived. Police tape danced in the breeze. Flashlights cut through the brush as the local authorities tried to make sense of what the marsh had given them. He must have gone for a walk, one officer said half-heartedly, slipped in the dark. But Adrian and I both knew that was a lie. The trail wasn't steep. It hadn't rained in days. And Ethan hated mud. I watched them zip up the body bag, my heart weirdly calm. No tears, no collapse. Just one thought on repeat, he knew. And someone made sure he wouldn't tell. "What do you want to do?" Adrian asked softly beside me. "Find out who else knows," I replied. We walked back to the villa in silence. Mara stood outside, arms wrapped around herself, her red hair a wild halo in the wind. "They're going to ask questions," she said. "Let them. I heard him and your sister arguing 2 nights ago," she added. "He was yelling about the emails, about someone named Michael." Adrian's jaw clenched. "It was never about me, was it?" I asked him, voice trembling. "You came here because you thought Ethan had something on your brother." "Yes," he admitted. "And then you stayed, because I reminded you of Eliza." He looked at me, pain in his eyes, at first. "And now?" Now he stepped closer, his voice tight. "Now I don't know where you end, and I begin." That should have terrified me. Instead, it made me ache. Back in my suite, I poured a drink with shaking hands. My sister hadn't come out of her room since the news broke. I knew she was falling apart, but I couldn't go to her. Not yet. I opened my laptop and went through the emails again. One stood out. A message from Ethan marked draft never sent. "Naomi's going to find it all. She's not stupid. And if Adrian thinks he can play her like he did Eliza, he's already lost. She's not like the others. She finishes things." I stared at the screen for a long time. He was right. I wasn't like the others. I finished things. And tomorrow I would start with my mother, because Eliza's name appeared in more than just the emails. It was buried in a trust fund filed under my family's estate, signed by my mother 10 years ago. And it turns out, Eliza Cole had once been a housekeeper. In our house. I confronted her in the breakfast lounge. She was buttering a croissant like the world hadn't just cracked open around us. "I found the trust," I said quietly. She didn't flinch. "You'll have to be more specific, darling. I have several." "Eliza Cole, employee trust, dated 10 years ago, signed by you. Beneficiary listed as child of employee, age pending." That finally made her pause. Slowly she looked up. "You went digging. You buried her in our house. You think I wouldn't—" A flicker of emotion passed across her face, regret maybe, or shame disguised as disdain. "She was a child," I continued. "Barely 20. Michael was twice her age and married. You knew what he was doing. You paid her to keep it quiet. She didn't want to press charges," she snapped. "She wanted security, and I gave it to her." "You gave her silence," I hissed. "I gave her safety. I gave her a future. And then you erased her." A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she said, "She left, took the money, changed her name. That was the deal." "She was pregnant," I said. "You knew, didn't you?" Her eyes didn't waver. "It was better for everyone if she disappeared." My voice broke. "Better for who?" "She was never going to survive in our world, Naomi. She was fragile, poor, a problem. She was human. She was a mistake your uncle couldn't stop making." I wanted to throw something, tear the damn room apart, but I didn't. I stood still. "You didn't just erase her, you erased me." That made her blink. "Don't be melodramatic." I laughed, cold. "You watched my marriage crumble. You watched Ethan take my sister. You sat front row as your daughters became enemies, and you never once reached for me." "I raised survivors," she said, "not victims." "No," I whispered. "You raised ghosts." I walked out before I could say more. Outside, Adrian waited on the veranda. I told him everything. "She lied to protect your brother," I said. "And now someone's tying off loose ends. Eliza, Ethan, who's next?" His face went pale. "What is it?" I asked. "I didn't tell you the full truth," he said, voice cracking. I stared. "Eliza's baby wasn't mine, and it wasn't Michael's." I shook my head. "Then whose?" "It was your father's." The world tilted. "What?" "She told me once, in a moment of weakness. Said she thought it might be Michael, but your father had come home early from a trip. They crossed paths. He was drunk. She never said more." I stepped back. "No." I didn't believe her, not then, but now. Everything shattered inside me. This wasn't just a family secret. This was the secret. The one they'd all built their lives around. The one they buried in trusts and wine cellars and dead marshes. And somehow I'd become the custodian of it all. Adrian reached for me. Naomi. But I backed away because now I couldn't trust him. Couldn't trust anyone. And I knew the final act wasn't coming. It was already here. The deal closed at 4:32 p.m. A developer from Miami wired the funds without a single question. They'd tear it all down, build something newer, shinier, emptier. Good. Let it burn quietly in the hands of strangers. I stood on the balcony of my villa one last time, the salt air biting at my cheeks. Mara had left the day before. No goodbye, just a note. Thank you for trying to give her peace. Adrian never came back after our last conversation. And honestly, I didn't expect him to. He'd told me too much, and not enough. But I kept the flash drive, I kept the email trail, I kept the hard truths. Because someone had to. The journal, I burned it. I lit it on the same dock where Adrian first kissed me, watched the pages curl into ash and drift into the sea. Eliza's words didn't need to live in ink anymore. They lived in me now. My mother tried to call the next day. I didn't answer. My sister sent a message that just said I didn't know, I swear. I didn't reply to that either. Because it wasn't about knowing, it was about seeing. And none of them ever saw me. Not until I owned the very place they tried to forget me. Not until I turned their sanctuary into my confession. I moved back to New York, bought a small brownstone in the West Village. Quiet, old, full of character and secrets just like me. Some nights I still dream of Ethan, sometimes Adrian, but mostly I dream of Eliza. She's never sad in those dreams. She walks barefoot through the sand eyes, forward, hair in the wind. And she always smiles at me, as if to say, you did it. You finished it. But the truth is, I didn't. Because stories like ours don't end. They just stop being whispered and start being passed down.